The sand-laden wind whispered secrets as Senefer Abdulazim adjusted the straps of his expedition pack. 15 years of archaeological research had led him to this moment, the culmination of a lifelong obsession with the forgotten shadow priesthood. His colleagues had called him mad, a conspiracy theorist chasing myths. But the intricate hieroglyphs he discovered in a forgotten Cairo museum archive told a different story. The entrance to the hidden pyramid was barely visible, a razor-thin crack in the bedrock that most would dismiss as a natural fissure. Only someone who knew exactly where to look could find it. Abdul had spent years deciphering the cryptic map tattooed on an ancient bronze disc, a relic passed down through his mother's side of the family. As he squeezed through the narrow opening, the darkness seemed to pulse around him. Unlike other pyramids he'd explored, this one felt alive, breathing, watching. The walls were not stone, but something else entirely. A substance that seemed to absorb light, leaving only the dimmest shadows of his headlamp. A cold draft carried the faintest whisper. Not wind. Words. Ancient words that seemed to seep into his mind rather than reach his ears. "Welcome, keeper," they murmured. "The shadows have been waiting." Abdul knew there was no turning back. Whatever secrets lay within the pyramid of shadows would change everything if he survived to tell the tale. The tunnel twisted impossibly, defying the geometric precision of Egyptian architecture. Abdul's compass spun uselessly, its needle dancing in erratic circles. Each step felt like walking through molasses, the air thick and resistant, as if the very atmosphere was trying to push him back. His research had uncovered fragments of the shadow priesthood's history, a secretive cult that predated the known Egyptian dynasties. They were not merely priests, but practitioners of a dark art that manipulated the very essence of shadow and light. Their power was so profound that entire civilizations had been erased from historical records, their existence reduced to whispers and half-forgotten legends. A sudden movement caught his eye. Something detached itself from the wall, not a creature, but a living shadow that moved with purposeful intelligence. It had no distinct shape, yet Abdul could feel its malevolent awareness, studying him. His hand instinctively went to the ancient bronze disc hanging around his neck. The family heirloom seemed to grow warm, pulsing with a soft light that momentarily pushed back the surrounding darkness. "Who are you?" Abdul whispered, knowing somehow that sound itself was a dangerous thing in this place. The shadow did not respond, but something or someone was listening. The chamber opened before him like a wound in reality. Massive columns rose from floor to ceiling, each carved with intricate symbols that seemed to shift and change when viewed from different angles. Abdul recognized some elements, hieroglyphs mixed with older, more arcane scripts that no modern linguist had ever successfully translated. Scattered across the stone floor were artifacts that defied classification. Curved obsidian mirrors that reflected nothing. Crystalline objects that absorbed light instead of reflecting it. And at the chamber's center, a pedestal holding what appeared to be a book bound in something that was definitely not leather. As he approached, the shadows around the pedestal began to coalesce. They formed tendrils, then arms, then the suggestion of a humanoid shape. A guardian, Abdul realized. Not a monster, but a construct of pure darkness designed to protect whatever secrets lay within the book. His mother's story suddenly echoed in his mind. Tales of the Keeper's lineage, of a family tasked with guarding and potentially unleashing an ancient power that could manipulate the very fabric of reality. The Shadow Guardian spoke, not with sound, but directly into Abdul's mind. "You are not prepared," it said. Fragments of family history crashed through Abdul's consciousness. His grandmother's cryptic warnings, the strange birthmark on the back of his neck that matched the symbols on the bronze disc. Generations of his maternal line had been connected to this place, though none had ever spoken openly about their true purpose. The Shadow Guardian continued its silent communication. Images flashed through Abdul's mind, scenes of ancient rituals, of darkness consuming entire civilizations, of a power so immense it could bend reality itself. The Shadow Priesthood was more than a cult. They were keepers of a cosmic balance, preventing something far more terrifying from entering our world. "Your bloodline carries the mark," the Guardian explained. "You are both the lock and the key." Abdel's archaeological training warred with an emerging sense of ancestral memory. He was no longer just an explorer. He was a descendant of guardians with a role he was only beginning to understand. The book on the pedestal began to emit a soft, pulsing light, not bright, but a deep, almost liquid radiance that seemed to breathe with its own rhythm. Ancient mechanisms began to activate around him. The columns started to rotate, their hieroglyphs realigning in complex patterns. Abdul understood now that this was more than a chamber. It was a massive ritual space designed to contain something monumentally powerful. The Shadow Guardian explained the history in fragmented visions. Millennia ago, the Shadow Priesthood discovered a way to bind interdimensional entities that fed on light and consciousness. These entities, called the Luminous Devourers, sought to consume entire realities, leaving nothing but absolute darkness. The book was a containment seal, a mystical contract that trapped these entities in a liminal space between dimensions. But the seal was weakening, and Abdel's arrival was not a coincidence, but a prophesied event. "You must complete the binding," the Guardian said, "or everything will be consumed." Shadows began to swirl around him, not threateningly, but with a sense of preparation. Ritual implements made of an unknown metallic substance rose from hidden compartments in the floor. The ritual demanded more than just recitation. It required a literal and metaphorical sacrifice, a connection of blood, memory, and will. Abdul understood now why his family had kept such careful records, why certain members were selected and trained in secret. His bronze disc was not merely an artifact. It was a key, an amplifier for a type of magic that predated written language. As he placed it into a central mechanism, the entire chamber hummed with potential energy. Blood from a small cut on his palm began to trace glowing lines across the floor, activating dormant magical circuitry that had remained untouched for thousands of years. The shadows around him were no longer just guardians, but participants in an ancient, cosmic drama. The luminous devourers approach, the Shadow Guardian warned, and they hunger. Something was breaking through, not from the darkness, but from an impossible brightness that seemed to tear holes in reality itself. The luminous devourers were not creatures of darkness, but entities of such intense light that they consumed everything in their path. Abdul realized the true nature of the Shadow Priesthood's mission. They were not worshippers of darkness, but protectors against a light so pure and overwhelming that it destroyed everything it touched. Darkness, in this context, was a shield, a protective membrane preventing total annihilation. The chamber walls began to pulse and shift. Reality itself seemed to buckle and warp. Abdul could feel the immense pressure of multiple dimensions pressing against each other, with this pyramid serving as the only barrier. His inherited memories began to surge. Generations of knowledge flooded his consciousness, showing him fragments of rituals, of battles fought in spaces between spaces. The book on the pedestal began to levitate, its pages turning by an unseen force. Each page was a contract, a mathematical equation, a mystical formula that described the delicate balance between light and darkness. Abdul understood now that this was never about good versus evil. It was about maintaining equilibrium. The Shadow Priesthood were cosmic mathematicians, ensuring that no single force, light or dark, could completely dominate. The Shadow Guardian merged partially with Abdul, sharing knowledge that human language could never fully capture. He saw civilizations rising and falling, realities being born and consumed, all part of an infinite, cyclical process. "You are the current keeper," the Guardian said. "Your choices will determine the next cycle." The ritual reached its climax. Abdul was no longer fully human, no longer just an archaeologist. He was becoming something else, a living conduit between worlds, a bridge between light and darkness. The bronze disc melted into his skin, its symbols becoming living tattoos that moved and shifted. His very molecular structure was changing, adapting to the requirements of the cosmic contract. Around him, the pyramid itself seemed to breathe. It was more than a structure. It was a living entity, a multidimensional being that had been waiting for this precise moment of transformation. "The seal must be renewed," the Guardian instructed. and you are the only one who can do it. As the ritual concluded, Abdul understood that his journey was just beginning. The Pyramid of Shadows was not an endpoint, but a threshold. He had been initiated into a secret order older than human civilization, tasked with maintaining a balance few could comprehend. The shadows around him were no longer threatening. They were allies, extensions of a complex magical system that protected reality itself. And he was now their primary guardian. Outside, the desert remained unchanged. No one would know the cosmic events that had just transpired. No one except Abdul, the latest in a long line of keepers. As darkness settled around the hidden pyramid, something had fundamentally changed, and the real work was about to begin. The first test of Abdel's new powers came swiftly. Hidden within his own research team was a descendant of an ancient rival order, the Luminarchitects, who sought to break the cosmic seal and unleash the luminous devourers. Ammonius Iskander, his most trusted colleague, had been watching him for months. Her seemingly innocent archaeological assistance was a carefully constructed facade. As Abdul processed his new awareness, he realized she had been manipulating their expedition from the beginning. "You don't understand the potential," Ammonius said, her eyes shifting between human and something entirely otherworldly. "The luminous devourers aren't destroyers. They're liberators." The shadows around Abdul bristled, forming protective tendrils. His inherited memories showed him the truth. The Luminarchitects were fanatics who believed total consumption of reality would lead to a perfect, unified existence. They failed to understand that such perfection would eradicate all individual consciousness. A silent battle erupted in the research camp. Equipment distorted, electronic devices flickered, and the very air became a battleground of competing magical frequencies. "You're just another jailer," Ammonius hissed, her form beginning to dissolve into pure light. Ammonius' transformation revealed the true power of the Luminarchitects. She wasn't simply human anymore, but a living conduit of raw, destructive energy. Her body became a prism of light that could slice through reality itself. Abdul discovered his new abilities were both defensive and offensive. The shadows that had once been mere guardians now responded to his will, creating intricate shields and weapons. Each movement was a complex magical calculation, balancing the energies of darkness and light. The battle moved beyond physical space. Their conflict existed simultaneously in multiple dimensions, with reality itself serving as their battlefield. Archaeological sites around the pyramid began to resonate with their conflict. Ancient stones vibrating, desert sands forming complex geometric patterns. His shadow guardian merged more deeply with Abdul, sharing combat techniques developed over millennia. "The Luminarchitects have always been our enemy," it explained. "They seek universal homogenization, an end to diversity, to individual existence." Ammonius' attacks were precise, targeting the very fabric of Abdel's dimensional anchoring. Each blast of pure light sought to unravel his magical defenses. As the battle intensified, the spirits of previous keepers began to manifest. They were not ghosts, but concentrated memories, magical constructs that could interact with physical reality. Abdel's grandmother, a powerful keeper he had never truly known, took spectral form beside him. "The seal is more than a magical contract," she explained. "It's a living ecosystem of balance." The spirits of past keepers surrounded Ammonius, their collective power creating a mystical barrier. Each represented a generation of guardians who had fought similar battles, preserving the delicate cosmic equilibrium. Abdul understood now that his role was not just to fight, but to understand. The luminous devourers and the shadow priesthood were two sides of the same cosmic system, neither inherently good nor evil, but necessary for universal complexity. His grandmother's spirit touched his forehead, downloading generations of hidden knowledge, magical algorithms, dimensional navigation techniques, and the true history of their order flooded his consciousness. The battle transformed. What had begun as a violent conflict became a complex negotiation. Ammonius was not simply an enemy, but a representative of a fundamentally different cosmic perspective. Balance requires dialogue, Abdul realized, channeling the wisdom of generations. Instead of destroying Ammonius, he began to communicate, not with words, but with pure conceptual exchange. Their magical energies intertwined, creating a temporary bridge of understanding. The Lumen architects, he discovered, were not malevolent. They were traumatized survivors of cosmic conflicts, believing total unification was the only path to safety. Their methods were destructive, but their core motivation was protection. Shadows and light began to intermingle, creating a stunning display of interdimensional communication. The pyramid itself seemed to breathe, its very stones recording this unprecedented moment of potential reconciliation. "We can coexist," Abdul proposed, his voice resonating across multiple dimensional frequencies. The final resolution was neither victory nor defeat, but a complex recalibration. Ammonia's form stabilized, no longer a weapon of pure light, but a negotiator. The Lumen architects would be granted a limited role in maintaining cosmic balance, under strict observational protocols. Abdul understood his true inheritance. He was not just a keeper, but a mediator, someone capable of finding harmony in fundamental conflicts. The Pyramid of Shadows would become a neutral ground, a place of cosmic diplomacy. His research team, oblivious to the multidimensional conflict, would continue their archaeological work. But now, secret magical observers would ensure no catastrophic dimensional breaches occurred. The bronze disk, now fully merged with his being, pulsed with a soft, balanced light. Darkness and illumination danced around him, no longer enemies, but partners in a grand, incomprehensible design. As dawn broke over the desert, only the pyramid knew the magnitude of what had transpired. And Abdulazim, once a simple archaeologist, now stood as a guardian of realities beyond human comprehension.